Welcome to State of Tech, Synchron's innovation podcast. Synchron is a leading global digital transformation consulting firm focused on financial services and big technology organizations. Our State of Tech podcast hosts subject matter experts and business leaders as they explore emerging technologies, industry insights, innovation trends, and more. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, I'm Joyce Pogge, and today we're joined by Nigel Cheatham, Principal Consultant at Synchron. Today, we'll be discussing supply chain risk insights as part of our recently launched RiskTech.ai Accelerators program. This program aims to enable financial services firms to stay attuned to and mitigate modern and emerging business risks like supply chain disruptions, particularly through the use of AI and generative AI integrated tools. Hi, Nigel, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks. Good to be with you, Joyce.
So, Nigel, let's just jump right in. Why is risk such an important and perhaps more recently identified component of the supply chain landscape for both banks and financial services companies?
Well, traditionally, banks and lending institutions have made decisions about giving loans to borrowers based on financial analysis. They look at the balance sheet, the income statement of the company. They'll hold interviews with the company's executive team and try to make a quantified decision about the financial viability of that organization. Unfortunately, we've seen that very recently, companies have been enormously affected by disruptions in their supply chain. So I'll give you a couple of examples. During the COVID pandemic in the United States, the California ports were closed. Therefore, manufacturing institutions that had loans with banks couldn't receive their parts and supplies in order to be able to manufacture goods. Not being able to manufacture goods put pressure on the company to meet its earnings and make its loan payments. Another example I could give you would be when Russia invaded the Ukraine, they cut off all grain exports from that country, which enormously affected cereal producers like Kellogg's in the United States because they couldn't get hold of the raw materials. What's interesting about supply chain is these events are not predicted. They are events that happen out of nowhere. So having a good understanding of a company's supply chain and being able to assess the factors that would affect that supply chain is such a valuable instrument when trying to make lending decisions by a financial institution.
We've really seen how AI and GenAI are really top of mind for everybody, for companies across industries. So how do you see advanced and cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence and generative AI helping banks and financial services institutions to tackle this type of risk?
Trying to understand supply chain of an organization is arduous. It's very complicated. If you think about Apple has 197 direct suppliers for their iPhone products. And each one of those suppliers have suppliers of their own that probably supply them with a small part or raw materials in order to be able to manufacture that part. And the supply chain is a network that can extend out quite far. Being able to try to identify and map and discover that supply chain is very, very difficult. Now, there are some clues that we can look at. For example, in the United States, a public company has to quarterly file a financial statement, and they are required by the SEC to disclose who are their largest suppliers and who are their largest customers. So traditionally, analysts have looked at those financial statements to discover who the suppliers are. The problem with that is that the list of suppliers is not presented in a consistent way. It's not in a table in the document that you can just go to and say, look, yes, item 5, here are my top 10 suppliers. That information, it generally tends to be buried in the narrative of the business operations section of the filing. Now, people have had a go at using natural language processing, which is a component of artificial intelligence, where natural language processing has tried to read and understand the narrative and extract that information. But NLP takes an awful amount of training in order to be able to get consistent results from these filings. But with generative AI and large language models in particular, no training is required. And so what that means is that the generative AI can actually read and understand, and you can simply ask the question, who are the largest suppliers for this company? Furthermore, when this was done manually, a bank analyst would read who those suppliers are, and then it would get the name of the supplier, and it would go and read their financial report and learn who their suppliers are, and then go and get their financial reports in order to be able to build a graph of what the supply chain looks like. But generative AI can do all that at scale. So we can simply set up a recursive pipeline that can consume public documents, analyze them, find the supply chain information, and then navigate down the supply chain in order to be able to build a thorough understanding of the supply chain. So AI really has empowered this new dimension of financial analysis and risk mitigation by being able to operate at scale very efficiently and very accurately, and provide the lending institution with information in almost near real time. Whereas this would have taken a bank analyst several days, weeks, months in order to be able to uncover this kind of information.
Thank you, Nigel. And, with that in mind, what future trends and changes do you foresee within the supply chain risk area for the global financial services industry?
Well, I think, as we've said, generative AI allows us to build a better understanding of who the borrower is and what the risk is. The beauty of supply chain analysis and having this graph also enables us to assess a new type of risk called concentration risk. And I'll give you an example. If I have a portfolio and I've made 2 loans, and the first loan that I made is to Samsung computers, laptop computers. I've given them a $50 million loan for a new fabrication plant in Texas. I also have made a $20 million loan to an electric car manufacturer in order for them to be able to improve their manufacturing plant. Now, you would think, looking at those 2 loans, that there's absolutely no correlation. One is a computer manufacturer, and the other is an automobile manufacturer, consumer discretionary being a separate sector. So there couldn't possibly be any kind of correlation in those loans, and it seems pretty secure. Except then, when we look at the supply chain, the computer manufacturer is sourcing all of their microchips from Taiwan. The car manufacturer has in the car a navigation system. That navigation system it purchases from a company in Texas. But the company in Texas sources the microprocessors that go into the navigation system from the same company in Taiwan. So there is a hidden concentration risk there where you have multiple loans affected by a single company. Now imagine in today's climate, there's geopolitical risk and China steps in and invades Taiwan. That would certainly affect the exports coming out of Taiwan, and my loan portfolio would be severely affected. And yet on the surface, it looks like there's a complete diversification. So what we're seeing now with generative AI is this ability to be able to analyze things through different dimensions. And I think in the future, you're going to see lending organizations not just look at financial well-being of the borrower or assess supply chain and concentration risk, but now we can look at other factors. For example, environmental viability, sustainability, governance, diversity of the companies asking to borrow money. Traditionally, that kind of analysis couldn't be performed. It was far too difficult because there's no real recognized data sets that can be analyzed to uncover that information. But generative AI and large language models has the capability to look at very large disparate data sets and infer and pick out information that can lead to far more advanced lending decisions and monitoring of overall portfolios. So it really does open up avenues for greater risk management and more comprehensive risk management for the financial institutions.
Thank you, Nigel. This has just been incredibly informative, and thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and for giving us some insights into the supply chain risk area.
Thanks for listening to the Synchron State of Tech podcast. Don't forget to like and share this episode, and subscribe to stay up to date on all of the latest and innovative technologies savvy businesses need to know about. To learn more about Synchron, head to our website at www.synchron.com. Stay tuned.